All right, everybody. Welcome back to another Monday check-in. This is the Art with Arrow podcast. Let's go, everybody. Woo! Okay. So, I always like to do my little brief introduction. I'm Arrow, I'm your host. I am an artist, a graphics designer, a gamer, content creator, and family man. I was in the Navy for 20 years, retired. And today's podcast is going to be about, I'm not there yet, but it's okay. It's okay, y'all. So I also like to do like a little recap before we actually dive into our little topic. So, last week we got, I think, one or two game streams in. Maybe one, I think it was. But we did our podcast. We did an art video, And it's going to be like a similar situation this week. I think it was two. I can't really remember now, kind of fading. I just got off of work, y'all. So I do work a little job at a local gym. And so let me just go to our gaming channel real quick and we can just verify our live streams. Because, I want to be kind of accurate to what we did. So we did. We got two in last week, right? 10th and 11th. And it was Fortnite streams. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's a good refresher right there. So, we got about average of what I usually get when I'm making content. And every day during the week we make like a little bit of gaming news. It's just a quick something I can make in the morning before I go to work. So, this journey has been interesting, y'all. It really has. So let's dive into our little topic for today. Honesty over hype. Everybody online is always about going full time, which that's the dream, to go full time as a content creator, right? A lot of people would like to, but do we ever actually look at what does that mean? What would it take? What would be comfortable? So nobody really talks about like the early numbers and or where they're at, I guess. And we're not there yet. I'm not there yet. If you're not there yet and you're in a similar boat with me, and that's okay. That's okay, y'all. That's okay. I mean, obviously here on Twitch, we only have 57 followers on Twitch, and I'm definitely not replacing my income with those numbers, right? Not even close. So today I want to talk about, what that doesn't mean, that I'm failing. It doesn't mean that I'm failing. But, it just means we're not where we want to be yet. But ideally, for me, with my retirement and, my disabilities and stuff, I would just need to replace my current income of the little job that I work for me to really be full time. And I average that to about $1,000 every 2 weeks, $1,000 every 2 weeks, which, it's not really a lot of money I make working at that little gym, but, because it's just under that, right? But I figured that would be a good place to be able to set like a realistic kind of goal of where I want to be like a full-time creator, right? And I think that's a real grounded kind of goal, not millions of dollars, not viral fame, just replacement for what I currently make, at that low job. Because that plus my retirement and stuff, I'm good. I'm good. And I can enjoy what I'm doing. So real numbers, y'all. Let's look at real numbers. So think about if you're in the same boat and you want to be like full time, right? How much would you actually need to be full time? Can you set a realistic goal? Like, did you actually look at the numbers, actually think about the numbers, or, you know, so 57 followers means we're in our early stage. We got a lot of growth that we need, to get where we need to go. Twitch growth is very slow by design. I think in order to really grow and get the numbers you want to be like full-time streamer, full-time creator, it doesn't just happen with Twitch. You have to do other things like YouTube, probably TikTok, because I'm not on TikTok like that, but I should be. If I want to make the growth in the numbers, I need to branch out. You got to be on Instagram. You got to be on Twitter. You got to be on all these other platforms to kind of, try to put yourself out there so you can try to gain your following. And, I'm a little slow to do all that because it's just too much for me to manage. So I've mostly been sticking with the Twitter, I was going to call it Twitter, X, Instagram, and YouTube. I probably should try to mess with the TikTok, but it's just too much, I think. But I should do it. You don't magically jump, up in 200 views every, it's not a magical jump. You got to build your community, right? So, where I'm at in this stage, I have 57 followers on here, but 57 people don't watch, so, the one thing I always noticed, and I always kind of like, I don't understand like how I got 57, but the folks don't ever pay attention when I do content, so I don't understand that aspect, like that's the same thing. Similar thing happens on YouTube, right? You'll get like subscribers, like for the drawing. This is a great example, y'all. I got a request to do that drawing, and I never saw the person even comment, from the person that requested it. So I don't know who that was. Interesting enough, the request for me to draw the or sketch the wire cleaner. That's what we did Friday. And it's been up since Friday, but I didn't ever see him like say, "Oh, thanks for doing my request." There's no comment, no nothing. So it's like, I don't understand it, but it's okay. I understand, maybe the person's busy. They didn't get a chance to see it. They requested it. I responded in that previous video's comment saying, I'll add it for next Friday. Basically, I didn't say it in those words, but I basically said so I assumed that they would watch it. You know what I mean? Trying to build a relation, because you want to communicate, and try to build the relationship. So hopefully that person keeps coming back to watch, or check out the content. So, but that happens a lot. I don't know why. I don't know. It's very strange. I kind of went off topic. Sorry, y'all. I will do that. That's why I have an outline, and I try to stick to the outline, y'all. I do. I try to stick to the outline. So, we don't magically jump up to 200 viewers, so we got to build this slow, and it's going to take time. But the fact that I'm able to be more consistent with the content I've been making, that every Monday I'm going to have this podcast, and hopefully Tuesday is kind of a wash right now because my kids are doing some after school activities on that day that prevents me from doing anything. And then also this week I have an appointment for Wednesday, I believe it is. So I'm only probably going to get one good game streamed in this week, and it's only 2 hours. So, we got to make the most of the time we have. But we will get an art video in on Friday. So that's our little 3, like long form, or the art videos are usually not that long because I haven't been able to set up the stream. So, you know, those are usually our longer forms of content that I can make. And every creator I think starts here. Some are more fortunate than others that they have more time to invest. My time is always constrained by the little bit of time that I have after work and before I got to pick up my kids, right? So that's where our limitation lies, which I've been working on plans to maximize that window. I want to maximize it as much as I can. That's why for me it's really important to be able to edit on the go, from my phone. If I can edit from my phone, I need to be able to do that. But some things you just can't do on the phone, So, I think where we're at is a good starting point. I'm trying to build things. I'm trying hard to make the better content. I really am. And, with the podcast, I really think we're getting better. I have these bullet points that, just to kind of keep me in line with this, to make this content better. And I'm just talking to it. I read, what I got there, and I just talk to it, which I think that's working better than what I was doing before. So I think I'm getting better at this, but please let me know in the comments, as always. So, what actually matters right now, is really, improving our content and maximizing our time. The goal isn't money, but in order for me to go full time, that's what I calculate I would need. It's just a replacement of what I currently make at that job, which would be fine. So the real goals would be to, do the minimum on what Twitch can, the 5 to 10 average viewers. If we can pull that off, then hopefully that can, start to elevate us, returning names in the chat. That's what we need. We need returning people to come and, this is all for the path, my path to get there, I got to do better with my shorts too. I think that's the thing for YouTube. It's like, being better at like posting more clips is what I need to figure out. My time is just limited, so it's very hard for me to get that done. But I've got to figure out how I can do it. There's got to be a way. I just need to figure that out. So, building our community. We're still in the building stage, Eventually, I think I can get there, or we can get there as a community together. It's just going to be, I need the folks to come in and be, participation, I need that participation. And hopefully, we'll get there at some point. So plans to move forward is really growth, man. We just need to focus on making better content so we can grow. That's the deal of where we at. Twitch I don't think is a growth engine. So, I'm doing the podcast on Twitch, and I'm also recording it so that I can chop it up for YouTube. So shorts and clips, that's something I need to be better at. Consistency. I think we've developed some good consistency overall. I have been way more consistent than I ever been. And I think that's a big part of us starting to develop and grow. And I stress that a lot, because I think that's where I failed a lot in the beginning. I just wasn't consistent with anything. And the switch to Facebook, which I totally regret. So, building those habits, which I think we've been doing, building habits, good habits, before scaling up scaling to, like, worry about the income, right? Because I mean, the idea to be a full time is it's a dream. Some people can do that. Some people are really good at putting things together and finding their path. My path has always been crazy ways and stuff, and that's mainly because of my faults of not being consistent, jumping platforms too much, a lot of failures on my part, and I'm trying to, build, these, what can we call it? Like, I guess build the right standards, maybe. Is that the right word? Maybe. To get there or whatever, or the foundation. Maybe that's the right word, foundation. And I think that the main thing is, I don't want to quit. I want to just, because it's all, I'm in my retirement of my first career, right? I did the 20 years in the Navy. We have like just a little job that, kind of brings my income back to where it was in the Navy, by having a little job that pays a little bit of money. And then I also have my retirement check, right? So those combined, basically puts me in a good state of living. And that's fine. To be able to eventually get to where I'm a full-time creator and do it and then still just make that same level of income would be phenomenal, because then you could just do something that you really enjoy, and earn your living, so not quitting, just trying to figure out our best way forward and trying to push the way we make our content to the max level, I don't want to be comparing myself to other creators, because I feel like, their journey is not my journey. So I shouldn't, look at other people's successes in that way. I think you look at other people's successes in the way of like, okay, what can I do similar to that to make my process better, and that's how I want to view things, I think everyone starts, of course, with low numbers, but quitting, if we was to quit, that would guarantee failure. So I don't think we need to quit. I think we just need to, look at where we're falling short, and try to improve. And that's what my podcast has mostly been about, just looking at ourselves and trying to figure out, hey, how do we make ourselves better? How do we push ourselves? Because if you're in the same boat as me and you work a job, you have a family, it's very difficult to try and find your path and find your time to do this type of stuff, right? So, of course, staying consistent, I think, is where we win. But it's also, we also have to improve in the other areas, we got to create opportunities. I got to figure out how to collaborate, which, I've reached out to folks before. I think I reached out to the wrong folks. So maybe I need to reach out to the people that I know that are trying to content create, which there's only a handful, ever since, there's a few folks that I was, streaming with before. They kind of quit, but I think they just went a different direction in life, and then they moved on. So I don't want to quit, because I think we can make it. It's going to be a struggle for me to kind of push myself harder, but I got to figure that out. If I want to make it, I'm going to have to figure out how to push myself harder. So in reflection, where we at? We're at 20 minutes already. Wow. Okay. So today's podcast is kind of going a little bit, I like it. It's good. But where are you guys at right now? Let's look at reflection. Are you reflecting on where you at? If you're trying to, do this thing as well, and figure your own path out, are you like setting like realistic goals? And I think that's what we have to always fall back and say, hey, what's a realistic goal that we can set? Because I'm not gonna get 200 viewers, tomorrow or today. It's not going to happen. But can I at least gain some steady viewers and followership? Maybe if I can be more consistent with my streaming, right? Right now, we've been consistent with the Monday podcast, so this has been happening every Monday. The art video, I need to start more live streaming with that, because that gives me another live stream for people to participate in, which we have a plan for next year. Getting a new camera, we're going to figure that out. That might be kind of mid-year when I figure out how I'm going to do the setup, or, and within the first 3 months maybe. We're going to close out our sketching sessions. I think I wanted to do like a marathon drawing, like sketching, so we can finish the sketchbook. Like I want to like do all the pages in that book. So I was thinking like, here, maybe not this Friday. What's in that? I don't have a calendar up, man. I need a calendar. Let me pull up a calendar, y'all. My apologies. I should have had a calendar up so we could kind of plan it out. Let me just go to a Google Calendar. All right, so this Friday is the 19th, so maybe the Friday after Christmas, we can do a marathon sketching session or something. I don't know. I don't think I could do it this Friday. But maybe the week of Christmas, we can do a marathon sketching where if you join the stream, you put in the chat what you want to see sketched, and we sketch it, and we just keep sketching people's ideas or characters or whatever it is, as long as it's tasteful and it's not crazy. Now we sketch it, right? We fill up the sketchbook before the end of the year. I don't even know how many pages that is. A lot of pages. Like I might have that might end up being a long stream. I don't know. We might have to figure that out. I want to do something like that though. I think that would be cool. A sketching marathon. I don't know. You see how I easily lose train of thought, y'all? I'm glad I have this outline here, but so we need realistic goals. Look at your own, path and think of realistic goals for yourself. And I would like, people to more conversate with me on this, we're not after perfection. We're just trying to figure out our right path. I think that's where we at. Yeah, and if you have small numbers like me, you're not behind. You're just early. That's what you're just. And being early isn't the only way, there is. So, it's all good, y'all. I'm really happy with the progress I think we've made this year, though. I really am. I look at the gaming channel, and we're at 203 subscribers on our YouTube channel now for gaming. I think I even gained a little bit on the art channel because I've been more consistent with the Friday sketches, which we can talk a little bit about next year. I want to finalize my plan before the end of the year, but I am getting a new camera for Christmas. It's like a Blackmagic studio camera where we can just live stream with high quality video footage, I think. and it's gonna be great. I just gotta figure out the setup for this room and how we're gonna do that. So we can do more full-fledged pieces. What I want to do is something, that we start a piece on a Monday and end it on a Friday. So we'll break it up into daily segments of maybe 30 to 40 minutes of sketching, drawing, then painting, to do like a full-fledged, piece that with the Friday video, when it's all put together, you have like a speed drawing of, from sketching it to drawing to finishing the drawing to painting it or marking it up. I like multimedia type stuff, so I'll use markers and paint, which I need new markers. And that's where I want it to go for next year, to like having more streams of that kind of footage, so figuring the setup is going to be challenging to do that, but that's the plan, that's the goal, is to get us to that point, or get us to that where we're doing like a full piece like that, and being able to capture it and record it. That's the thing. And then with the gaming stuff, I think we're gonna reduce the gaming down to like, maybe an hour of just playing some games. I don't know. We'll figure it out though. So we're gonna have a little gaming and a little artwork every day next year is what the goal is. And like I said, it may take a couple months for me to figure out how to set up and do the camera, because that's gonna be some trial and error there. To set it up, so I can use the new camera, which is going to give us high quality, footage, I believe. So, I want it to be, higher quality and look really good, with these current cameras I have, they're these, I have two of these, the, face cam, Elgato face cam. And this is the one I usually put above for when I do a live sketch. Which these are nice, but I don't think they give you the best quality of video footage. And that's what I want. I want a higher quality video footage, man. Of the artwork, so it looks better. So I enjoyed this podcast today. My podcasts are short, 20 to 30 minutes. I think we went 40 minutes one time. I'm trying to get better at this. I like to have a little outline, so I try to outline some stuff to kind of like touch on. And, for me to go full time, I would need to, earn that 1,000 every 2 weeks, basically. Is that achievable? I think it is in the long run. If we can gain some traction this next year, and have more content posted, maybe I do need to get on TikTok to kind of like increase my range of viewership or range of contact. I don't know. I was hoping that just YouTube and Instagram and X would be enough to like push me out there, but it's kind of hard to gain traction. But I think we can do it over time, because we have been growing, which for the gaming channel, it's been doing really well because I've been having a post go up every day. I think I just need to have more art posts every day. And I think we can do that next year if we divide it up into like a little game stream live, and then a little live of doing some artwork. and that will give us 2 sets of content that we can put between the 2 channels. Yeah. So I got some plans. I don't know how I'm going to manage doing the shorts, chopping them up. I would like to chop this podcast up into some more shorts. I was trying Opus Clip, but you only get 60 credits free every month. So I can only really do like one long podcast, every month with that. So, and I don't have an editor or nothing, so I've got to figure out my best way to make those clips, which has always been challenging because time, like I said, my time is very constrained to like, approximately 2 to 3 hours ish of content creation. So, which is challenging, but I still think it's doable. I still think all this is doable. Everything we talked about, I think is doable. I think it's just a matter of, figuring it out, figuring out the path, figuring out the way, hopefully we'll get there. And I think I have high hopes for next year too, because this year I think we have made a lot of progress on the way we make our little bit of gaming news, and all that. So I think we're making progress. It's just slow going. So I think we can end it here. I would like to hear about your journey. So if you would like to comment, y'all, please, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on this. How much would you need to go full time if that's your dreams and aspirations? Drop me a line, y'all. Like, let me hear about your journey a little bit. Like I said, I don't really care about fame. I would just rather a replacement for my paycheck. That's it. And that would sustain, and I would just keep making content and then just keep trying to progress and get better. That's all. All I would need to go full time is just a replacement for my current job's paycheck. And I think that's for anybody, right? Pretty much, same old, maybe something like that, So let me know, guys, where you're at in your journey. Drop some numbers, maybe, what some estimates of what you would need, how much time do you actually have to content create, stuff like that. You can drop all that in the comments, y'all. So till next time, you know what to do. I'm out of here, y'all.